So here's the question. Does it matter what kind of MIDI keyboard that you use when you're recording music through a computer? When I had a person ask me that question online, they were met with a bunch of conflicting answers. Yes, no. A lot of comments that said things like, obviously, the more expensive the keyboard, the better. Is that correct? The answer? No. And I'm gonna prove that to you today. Now, if I had to answer that question in 2 words, I'd say, not really. If I had to answer it in 1 word, I'd say, no-ish? Here's the deal. The difference between a cheap MIDI keyboard and an expensive MIDI keyboard has a lot to do with features. The more expensive keyboards usually have a better build quality. They come with a package of software and a bunch of other perks. The less expensive keyboards, or the cheaper keyboards, usually come with less software and less features. But can you play them the same way to get the same result? For the most part, yes. I went through my inventory of equipment and I picked out 4 keyboards, all in different price ranges. I have this Casio keyboard that was about $100 that I bought so my kids can learn and practice. I brought up my most recent purchase that I bought to travel with, which is this Native Instrument keyboard with these mini keys. And this one is between the $100 and $200 price range. I brought out my Novation X Station, which was my original travel keyboard. I also use it for my in-home studio as well, being that it has phantom powered XLR inputs that I can plug microphones and things into. I use it as my audio interface, but today I'm gonna focus on just its key functionality. From what I remember, this Novation was in like the $400 price range. And for the 4th keyboard, I'm gonna show you my Korg workstation. That one priced between $2,000 and $3,000. So here we are, we're gonna compare keyboards between $100 and thousands of dollars. You ready? I'm ready. You ready? So this is how it's gonna work. I'm gonna start out with the first keyboard, which is the X Station. I'm going to play some notes, a basic chord, and we're gonna see how it sounds using the system software. So let's start out. If I press it softly, if I press it more aggressively. So now we have the Korg workstation. This is in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, and we're going to test this out. The keys feel a little different. They have a different weight to them. But did you hear a difference as I pounded on the notes? Next, I'm going to show you the Native Instrument M32, which is my travel keyboard. This is my most recent purchase. This is the newest of the bunch. Old, new, expensive, inexpensive. We're going to see how it compares when playing through software. So if you aren't seeing the pattern yet, you're starting to see that no matter the cost, they all play in the software pretty much the same. Now, we have one more, and I saved the last keyboard for a good reason, and you're about to find out why. All right, so next we have my kids' Casio keyboard that they learn and practice on, rarely. This one was the cheapest of the bunch. This one was about $100. This is not meant for professional use. And this is where you're going to hear the distinct difference between the 4 keyboards. The first 3 keyboards, almost identical in sound. In fact, probably identical. The only difference that you'll find between those is how sensitive the keys are and velocity. This is probably where you'll hear the difference. Now, if you notice there, I barely had keys held and you started to hear a roll. What's happening is that this keyboard is not velocity sensitive. So if I press on a key lightly, it plays the same way as if I press on it aggressively. So here's the verdict. The $99 keyboard, not so great. It will get the job done. If that's all you can get your hands on, if that's all you can afford, go for it. Start out, start making your music. You can always go in post-production and edit the volumes of each note if you'd like. The drawback to that, a lot of editing time. As far as the other three keyboards are concerned, the one that's a little over $100, between $100 and $200, the one that's around $400 and the one that's over $2,000, played the notes the same. The average ear is not going to hear the difference between the velocity range between those keyboards. Some keyboards have a velocity range that's much higher than others, but in today's day and age, the keyboards that are velocity sensitive have a decent range and it doesn't really matter that much. So the question is, why are some keyboards more expensive than others? Again, quality build, size, the feeling of the keys, functionality, buttons, knobs, DAW interface. The keyboard that I show you that was over $2,000 is a workstation, which is a full encompassing keyboard. It doesn't need a computer. I can score an entire movie on it without ever touching a computer. It has its own sounds, it can layer tracks, it's got a touchscreen on it, so on and so forth. While this little buddy is just over the $100 and under $200 because it is made of more flimsy material. It's tiny, the keys are small, especially for someone who's got big sausage fingers like I do. But I always own keyboards like this because it can fit in a backpack. I could take it on a plane, I can make music in a hotel room. And to be quite honest, this one has a ton of functionality. These buttons can be used to start and stop the track, to start the recording, to quantize, to pitch fade, modulation. I can navigate through my DAW with these knobs. It can fool you with its size, but this is a little beast. In fact, it even has an input for a pedal, which segues me to the next thing. When it's time for you to pick your keyboard, pick it based on how the keys feel to you. If that's something that's important to you, test it out before you buy it. Key size, the bounce of the key or how weighted it is, these are important factors for a lot of people. The other thing is, I would suggest that it does have a foot pedal input. And the reason why is, even if you aren't a pianist, you might have a pianist come to your studio or use your equipment. And most of them are going to want a pedal for sustain or dampening. Make sure that it's velocity sensitive. Outside of those things, everything else is just pickiness. Any other box that anybody's telling you to check off or that you created for yourself to check off, it's personal preference. I'm not knocking people for having those boxes. I have my boxes too. Before I picked this thing up, I did my homework to figure out between a ton of different brands and models which keyboard that I wanted. And this one ended up having, one, the features that I wanted, and two, software that I wanted to test out. Before locking in on Logic Pro, I've used multiple versions of Pro Tools, Cubase, Fruity Loops. Obviously, I've used GarageBand. And the one software I haven't used that's extremely popular these days is Ableton. Since this came with Ableton Lite, so why not test it out? It was part of my deciding factor. I hope that helped a lot of you who had any questions about prices of keyboards and which one's right for you, and if they were all born equal. I'm out. You keep producing.